just for a second, I just want to imagine a different MP for East Devon. Somebody who represents East Devon's interests by frequently tabling questions to ministers on matters of importance to constituents, who regularly takes part in debates that are of importance to East Devon residents and speaks out on their behalf, even on controversial issues, who initiates debates to further the interests of their constituents, who is free to speak and free to act, as you'll see from my slogan, because they are not a member of a party and because they are not subject to a party whip. An MP who has more time to represent constituents because they are not a party member and therefore do not have to attend a myriad of group meetings. Contrary to what many people think, an independent MP has far more scope to represent their constituency than any party member has. Anyone who's lived in East Devon for any length of time is likely to have noticed a rich seam of discontent among residents. That discontent, very far from the apathy that we keep hearing about, has grown into something that resembles a revolution. In November 2012, thousands of residents marched on East Devon District Council's offices at the Knoll, which of course takes many of its orders from political colleagues at central government. The event brought together people from all over the district, united with one emotion, a burning anger, which I share wholeheartedly. The demonstrators on the march were absolutely furious. Why? Because their views were being ignored. Actually, not just ignored, but trampled, trivialised and steamrolled. The main focus for their anger were planning decisions by East Devon District Council, but actually fuelled by central government. Decisions that led to communities having excessive levels of development imposed upon them. To give one example, a tiny community between Broadclist and Pinhoe, Westclist, has had a whopping 1,200 houses imposed on it. Where the highest quality agricultural land lay 4 years ago, bounded by about 30 bungalows, there are now sprawling housing estates. Since the beginning of the East Devon Revolution, as I tend to think of it, a plethora of blogs, Facebook pages and campaign groups have been established right across the district. Save Our Sidmouth, Budley Longboat Association, Save Elizabeth Hall in Exmouth, there's people from across the district who are probably involved with these campaigns. Protect Ottery St Mary. The widespread resentment, quite understandably, is directed at our Conservative-run local council and its political allies at central government. Most recently and most significantly, we've seen the rise of the East Devon Alliance, which draws together all of the smaller campaign groups under one umbrella. It's a powerful force for positive action and has given hope where there was previously a sense of hopelessness. Apart from the loss of our precious countryside and trees, the loose planning rules in the National Planning Policy Framework are playing havoc with our ability to get appointments at our local GP surgeries and to get our children and grandchildren into schools in the communities where we live. Our roads are becoming ever more clogged with traffic, as the NPPF states that planning applications can only be refused on traffic grounds if the impact is severe. Even applications proposing hundreds of houses are now not objected to by Devon County Council highways officers quite often. Mr Cameron's claims on Countryfile in 2012 must ring hollow in the ears of many people. 2 years ago, David Cameron told John Craven, "I care deeply about our countryside and our environment. I would no more put that at risk than I would put at risk my own family." I think we all have a response to that one. And as for the claim at the beginning of this government that it was going to be the greenest ever, well, I think that's rather laughable, isn't it? So, why is all this happening? Well, the government seems to be making policy not for the benefit of its citizens, but for the benefit of big business. We all know that there's a huge deficit, that times are tough and things must change, but ministers seem to be sacrificing our most precious assets on the altar of economic growth without any regard for voters' views. It's economic growth at all costs, and big business is evidently influencing government policy. Ministers actually asked developers to write the National Planning Policy Framework. The Coalition is also offering tax breaks to big businesses, including fracking companies. At least 50 big businesses have special access to ministers through a buddying scheme, including oil companies, pharmaceutical giants and telecoms companies. Our own MP is buddied with Procter & Gamble, which is contributing to the destruction of the rainforest with its use of palm oil in shampoo. The lobbying bill, or quite wrongly named, Transparency of Lobbying, Non-Party Campaigning and Trade Union Administration Bill, was supposed to address the concerns about the behind-closed-doors influence of big business, but it signally failed. There is little improvement on transparency in the government's dealings with big business. Instead, it is actually the charities that have had their influence curtailed, which of course is minuscule, but compared with the influence of the likes of Procter & Gamble or the pharmaceutical giants. Big business appears to be rewarding the Conservatives in particular by pouring millions of pounds into Tory party coffers. The trade unions do likewise to the Labour Party. In East Devon, we know only too well the corrosive effect that big business can have on local government policy. Many of you will remember that in 2012 I lodged a motion to remove East Devon District Council's £5,000 a year funding to the East Devon Business Forum, whose big property developer members had hugely influenced the council's planning policy in their favour. Many of you will remember that I was heckled and insulted and ridiculed for proposing it. But less than a year later, East Devon District Council cut itself loose from East Devon Business Forum in the wake of an undercover Daily Telegraph sting, and a police investigation is still ongoing into the activities of former councillor Graham Brown, of course. Something else that makes me angry is the crippling loss of our public services in East Devon. Central government is forcing Devon County Council to cut an eye-watering £110 million by 2017. And it follows a similar amount cut by central government to the council in the last 4 years. It's estimated that by 2017, around 40% of council budgets will be lost. The effect in East Devon is already taking shape. We are seeing communities devastated with the closures of libraries, youth centres, children's centres, day centres and residential homes. Our roads seem to be permanently potholed and our verges remain uncut. Our pothole roads seem to be a metaphor for what's wrong with this government's commitment to public services. And it's only just started. Next year and the year after will be even worse, and councillors are virtually helpless in the face of such massive budget cuts. Our two MPs, who we relied on to speak up for us, have unfortunately not found their voices. Year after year has actually seen them voting in favour of the local government cuts and in favour of the hardship that such cuts have and will cause. It should shame government ministers that more and more people in East Devon are being forced to use food banks. The government claims that NHS funding is ring-fenced, at the same time as insisting that it must make millions of pounds worth of savings. The Royal Devon Exeter Hospital, one of the best hospitals in the entire country, is now struggling with a massive deficit, which is set to reach 13 million by 2016. As a member of the Devon County Council Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I'm aware that East Devon's community hospitals are likely to see major bed losses in the coming months, in a bid to save money and move care closer to home. While the evisceration of public services is taking place, the government is wasting our money on vanity projects such as high-speed rail. We'll be taxed on the 50 billion it's costing. The environmental cost, with the loss of dozens of important woodlands, is unlikely to ever be recovered. Yet a fraction of that 50 billion would dramatically improve Devon's rail services. The Police and Crime Commissioner elections cost £70 million, and our own Police and Crime Commissioner here in Devon and Cornwall is costing considerably more than the cost of the old police authority. So, more than ever before, people of this country are turning away from the big political parties. They're tired of party politics, mechanical-sounding politicians, and the slavishly followed party line, and the whipped vote, which is often at odds with the rhetoric. In my experience, there's actually little apathy in East Devon. The disaffection resembles a kind of fury that burns hotter and hotter. The way things are going, it will reach boiling point by the time the next general and local elections take place next year. And speaking of the local elections next year, I'm hoping that we'll see a large number of minority and independent candidates stand, perhaps some of you in this room even. Because a long-standing majority of 42 Conservative councillors out of 59 is unhealthy at best and corrosive at worst, as it would be if the Labour Party held 71% of the council seats. I am, and I want to be, the opposite of a political party. I'm independent. I have no party, no line to take, no whip to tell me how to vote, and no nationally produced manifesto. I would never have to choose between my conscience and a party line. I will not take donations from corporations. I am free to speak and free to act. And there are mechanisms within the House of Commons that an independent like me could use to further the causes of her constituency. I would make full use of them. If I have the honour of being elected as East Devon's MP, I promise I would always work hard and do my utmost to represent people's views, just as I have time after time as a councillor. My manifesto will be based on your views, needs and wishes, and it will be published after I have spent 6 months visiting as many East Devon communities as I can to collect those views, needs and wishes. Today has come about as a result of dozens of people asking me to run for Parliament as an independent, and after much soul-searching, I knew it was the right thing to do. I'm deadly serious about getting elected, and if I did, I would spend as much time in the constituency meeting with and helping my constituents as possible. During my election campaign, I will prove that there is a much better alternative to party politics, and that's an independent, free-thinking, free-acting, spirited alternative.